Welcome to long-form content of Tech Bytes and News. This is a compilation on latest news and articles featured on Hacker News. You can find the original links of articles in the description. Please like and subscribe to support future content. Hope you enjoy.
Welcome to Tech Bytes and News, your daily roundup of articles featured in Hacker News. Today, we're diving deep into Mark Marquand's resignation from leading the Asahi Linux project. A truly significant event in the open source world, wouldn't you say? It's a story of passion, burnout, and the complexities of community management in a technical landscape.
Absolutely. The sheer scale of what he accomplished with Asahi Linux is breathtaking. Getting Linux running smoothly on Apple Silicon, that's a monumental achievement. But the post highlights a lot more than just technical prowess. It's a very human story, too. The entitled users, the upstreaming struggles. It all paints a picture of immense pressure.
Precisely. He started with the Wii homebrew scene, right? He experienced similar frustrations there, dealing with users primarily interested in piracy, a stark contrast to the initial enthusiasm surrounding Asahi Linux. He mentions that the M1 project felt different, open, without the need for jailbreaks, and focused on a much larger technical challenge. That initial wave of support was incredible, wasn't it?
Yeah, the early days sound amazing. Building a smooth Linux experience from scratch, with zero vendor support, that's the stuff of legends. But then the challenges started piling up. The upstreaming battles with the Linux kernel. The constant demands for new features. It's a classic case of, the more you do, the more they want syndrome in it. And the dwindling donations. That's a real gut punch.
Yeah, it's a tough situation. The constant pressure, the entitled users demanding more. It's exhausting just reading about it. He even mentions personal issues in 2024, adding another layer of complexity. The harassment and stalking he and his family faced, that's completely unacceptable.
Absolutely. And the Rust for Linux situation adds another dimension. He clearly feels Linus Torvalds' handling of Rust integration was a failure of leadership. And that's a pretty bold statement. The stonewalling, the abuse, the lack of support, it all contributed to his decision. He even points out the irony of the Linux kernel model seemingly punishing downstream forks, even though that's what they were forced into. The Mesa situation is particularly frustrating.
I see. It's a complex interplay of technical hurdles and human dynamics. The thin blue line comment? That's chilling. It speaks volumes about the culture he's describing. And the hidden resentment, the two-faced behavior. That's incredibly disheartening. He mentions that he's not employed by anyone, and that they have zero corporate sponsorship besides some CDN credits. It's all volunteer work, fueled by passion and dwindling donations.
Exactly. It's a powerful indictment of the current state of open source development, especially in the Linux kernel community. It highlights the unsustainable nature of relying solely on volunteer contributions, especially when facing such significant technical and interpersonal challenges. He even draws parallels to Konkolivas's departure years ago, suggesting that the situation hasn't improved. The loss of hobbyist roots is a significant point.
It's a sad but important story. It's a cautionary tale about burnout, the importance of community health, and the need for better support structures within open source projects. He's stepping down, but the project will continue. He's encouraging donations to the Asahi Linux Open Collective, and he's open to remote consulting work.
A fitting end to a remarkable chapter. It's a story that deserves to be heard, and hopefully it will spark conversations about improving the sustainability and well-being of open source communities. Thanks for joining us on Tech Bytes and News. We hope you found this discussion insightful.
Thanks for listening, everyone, and remember to support open source projects responsibly. Goodbye.
Bye-bye.
Welcome to Tech Bytes and News, your daily roundup of articles featured in Hacker News. Today, we're diving into a fascinating article about significant improvements in text rendering within Chromium-based browsers on Windows. It's a really interesting story about collaboration and user feedback driving impactful changes. Get ready!
Absolutely. I've been hearing whispers about this. What's the core issue addressed in this update?
Right, so the problem was that text in Chromium-based browsers on Windows, particularly after Edge's switch, looked, washed out, not as crisp or consistent with the rest of the Windows system. Users noticed a significant difference.
I see. So it wasn't just a minor visual glitch, it was a noticeable difference in text quality?
Exactly. It was a big deal. The article highlights that Chromium uses Skia, a cross-platform graphics engine, which, while powerful, didn't initially perfectly integrate with Windows ClearType text rendering settings. This led to different default contrast and gamma values compared to the native Windows experience.
So Skia, while amazing, missed some crucial Windows-specific nuances?
Precisely. It didn't automatically pick up the settings from the Windows ClearType tuner, and its default values were different. Think of it like this. Skia is a great painter, but it needed the right color palette for the Windows canvas.
That's a great analogy. So how did they solve this? Did they just change the default settings?
Well, it wasn't quite that simple. They first added support for respecting the ClearType tuner settings, but most users don't tweak those settings, so they needed to adjust the default values. This involved extensive research and experimentation with different contrast values to find the sweet spot.
Wow, that's a lot of work. How did they determine the optimal contrast value?
They conducted extensive user research. Going back to 2021, they experimented with various values and eventually settled on 1.0, which closely matched the pre-Chromium Edge rendering and looked consistent with other Windows apps. It was a collaborative effort between the Edge and Chrome teams.
That's impressive collaboration. So the result is noticeably better text rendering in Chrome 132 and later versions?
Absolutely. The article shows before and after images. The difference is striking. The text now looks crisp and clear, much more consistent with the rest of the Windows environment. A huge win for users.
This is a fantastic example of how user feedback and cross-team collaboration can lead to significant improvements. It really highlights the importance of listening to your users. I'm excited to see what other improvements come from this kind of collaborative approach.
Me too. And that's it for this Tech Bytes and News update. Thanks for listening, and we'll catch you next time with more exciting tech news. Goodbye.
Bye-bye.
Welcome to Tech Bytes and News, your daily roundup of articles featured in Hacker News. Today, we're diving into a really interesting piece from the Washington Post about the UK's demand for a backdoor into Apple's data and the potential ramifications for Americans. It's a hot topic, folks.
Absolutely. The headline alone is eye-catching. So, what's the core issue here? Why are U.S. lawmakers so concerned about a U.K. government order affecting Apple?
Right. Essentially, the UK wants a backdoor into Apple's encrypted data. Think of it as a master key that would allow them access to any Apple user's information, bypassing security measures. This is a huge privacy concern, not just for UK citizens, but for Americans too.
I see. But how does this affect Americans? Apple is an American company, sure, but...
Exactly. That's the crux of the argument. The fear is that if the UK sets this precedent, other countries might follow suit now. And if a backdoor exists, it's not just governments that could exploit it. Cybercriminals could potentially gain access as well. It's a slippery slope.
So it's not just about the UK potentially accessing data. It's about the potential for widespread abuse of a weakened security system? That's a pretty significant risk.
Precisely. The letter to the new Director of National Intelligence, Tulsi Gabbard, highlights this. Senators Wyden and Biggs from opposing parties are united in their concern. They're urging Gabbard to pressure the UK to retract the order. It's a bipartisan effort, which speaks volumes about the seriousness of the situation.
Interesting. So it's a matter of international relations and national security, as well as individual privacy. It's a complex issue with far-reaching consequences. This isn't just a tech issue, it's a geopolitical one.
You're spot on. The article emphasizes the potential for this to set a dangerous precedent, undermining encryption globally and potentially compromising the security of millions, regardless of nationality. It's a major challenge to data privacy and security.
And the timing with Gabbard's recent appointment is significant, isn't it? She's immediately facing a major international security challenge.
Absolutely. It puts her in a tough spot, having to navigate this complex issue with a key ally. The article suggests she needs to act decisively. It'll be interesting to see how she handles this. It's a high-stakes situation.
It really is. This whole situation underscores the tension between national security interests and individual privacy rights in the digital age. It's a debate that's only going to become more crucial as technology advances.
Indeed. And that's why this Washington Post article is so important. It highlights a critical issue with global implications. Thanks for joining us on Tech Bytes and News. We hope you found this discussion insightful. Have a great day, and stay tuned for more tech news. Goodbye.
Bye-bye.
Welcome to Tech Bytes and News, your daily roundup of articles featured in Hacker News. Today, we're diving deep into Google BigQuery's new pipe query syntax. It's a game changer, folks. Seriously.
I've heard whispers. What makes it so revolutionary? Is it just syntactic sugar, or is there real power under the hood?
Oh, there's definitely real power. It's all about readability and maintainability. Think of it like this. Standard SQL can get incredibly convoluted, especially with complex aggregations. Pipe syntax streamlines everything.
So it's a more linear approach? Like a data pipeline visualized in the query itself?
Exactly. You start with your from clause, then chain pipe operators, greater than, where, aggregate, join, extend, set, drop, rename, each transforming the data step by step. It's incredibly intuitive.
That's neat. But how does it handle complex queries that usually need CTEs or subqueries in standard SQL?
Those become much simpler. Instead of nested structures, you just add more pipe operators. It's like building with Legos. Each block adds to the final structure. No more mind-bending nested queries.
I see. So it's not just about aesthetics, it actually simplifies the logic?
Precisely. The linear structure mirrors the logical flow of your data transformation. Debugging becomes a breeze because you can inspect the intermediate results at each pipe stage. It's a huge win for collaboration, too.
I'm curious about performance. Does this elegant syntax come at a cost? Does it impact query execution time or pricing?
Nope. Google assures us that pipe syntax queries are priced, executed, and optimized identically to their standard SQL equivalents. The efficiency remains the same. Only the readability improves dramatically.
That's reassuring. Are there any limitations I should be aware of?
A few minor ones. You can't use differential privacy clauses directly after a pipe, and named windows aren't supported. But honestly, those are small trade-offs for the massive improvement in clarity.
Okay, I'm sold. Where can I learn more?
The Google Cloud documentation is your best friend. They have a comprehensive guide, including detailed explanations of each pipe operator and plenty of examples. It's all very well documented.
Fantastic. This sounds like a significant advancement in BigQuery. Thanks for the breakdown.
My pleasure. Remember, pipe syntax is currently in preview, so keep an eye out for updates and feedback opportunities. And that's all the time we have for today's Tech Bytes and News. Thanks for listening, and have a great day.
Bye-bye.
Welcome to Tech Bytes and News, your daily roundup of articles featured in Hacker News. Today, we're diving into a fascinating mathematical work titled An Infinitely Large Napkin. It's a self-contained introduction to higher mathematics, aiming to provide an intuitive understanding of various advanced topics. Think of it as a deep dive, but without getting bogged down in rigorous proofs for every single theorem.
A napkin approach, you say? That sounds intriguing. What kind of mathematical concepts does it cover?
Oh, it's a broad spectrum. We're talking groups, metric spaces, topology, linear algebra, representation theory, quantum algorithms, calculus, complex analysis, measure theory, algebraic number theory, algebraic topology, and even category theory. It's quite ambitious in scope.
Wow, that's quite a range. How does it manage to cover so much ground without getting overly dense?
That's the beauty of the napkin approach. The author prioritizes explaining the why behind theorems, rather than getting bogged down in the nitty-gritty of the proofs. He focuses on providing intuitive explanations, key examples, and the precise statements of important theorems, giving the reader a strong feel for each topic without the exhaustive detail of a full university course.
I see, so it's more about building intuition and understanding the big picture, rather than mastering every technical detail. That's a refreshing approach. Does it assume a high level of prior mathematical knowledge?
It does assume some mathematical maturity. The author expects the reader to be comfortable with proofs, logical arguments, and basic set theory, but it's definitely accessible to a wider audience than a typical graduate-level textbook. He even mentions unusually intelligent kittens fluent in English as a potential readership.
That's a great way to set the tone. So what are some specific examples of the intuitive explanations you mentioned? How does it make these advanced topics more accessible?
Well, for instance, in linear algebra, instead of starting with matrices, it emphasizes linear maps as the fundamental objects. This makes concepts like the determinant and eigenvalues much more intuitive. Similarly, in topology, it starts with metric spaces to build intuition before moving to the more abstract topological spaces. The author also uses a lot of visual aids and analogies to make the concepts more memorable and easier to grasp.
That makes sense. It sounds like a really effective way to learn these topics. Are there any exercises or problems included?
Absolutely. The book includes 3 levels of problems: inline questions, inline exercises, and more challenging problems at the end of each chapter. Some of these are quite difficult, even Olympiad-level problems. The author even provides hints and solutions in the appendices.
That's excellent. It sounds like a really valuable resource for anyone interested in learning higher mathematics. Is the book freely available online?
Yes, it is. The source code and PDF are hosted on GitHub, and the author encourages pull requests for corrections and suggestions. He even asks for pictures of kittens.
Fantastic. I'll definitely be checking this out. Thanks for bringing this to our attention. It sounds like a truly unique and valuable resource for anyone interested in exploring advanced mathematics.
You're welcome. And that's all the time we have for today's Tech Bytes and News. Thanks for listening, and we'll see you next time for another exciting exploration of the tech world and beyond. Goodbye.
Bye-bye.
Welcome to Tech Bytes and News, your daily roundup of articles featured in Hacker News. Today, we're diving into WGER, a self-hosted, open-source fitness tracker. It's got a massive community behind it, and it's really interesting.
Oh, I'm excited to hear about this. Self-hosted, you say? That implies a certain level of technical expertise for setup, right?
Yeah, you're right. But they offer a Docker Compose setup, which simplifies things considerably. It's a lifesaver for those who aren't super comfortable with server administration. They even have a demo you can run with a single Docker command.
A demo? That's brilliant for showcasing the software. What kind of features does WGER offer? Is it just tracking workouts, or is there more to it?
It's a pretty comprehensive suite. Workout tracking is a big part of it, obviously, but it also handles nutrition and weight tracking. Think of it as a personal fitness management system, all in one place. And it even has a REST API, which is amazing for integration with other apps.
A REST API? That opens up a world of possibilities. Could you elaborate on that a bit more? What kind of integrations are we talking about?
Well, you could potentially integrate it with other health apps, create custom dashboards, or even build your own fitness-related tools on top of it. The possibilities are really only limited by your imagination, you know? It's pretty exciting.
I see. So it's not just a simple tracker, it's a platform. But being self-hosted, there's the issue of maintenance and updates, right? How does that work with WGER?
That's a valid concern. They use a pretty standard Git workflow, so updates are managed through the usual pull requests and releases. The documentation is quite thorough too, which is a big plus. It's very well maintained.
That's reassuring. And what about the licensing? Is it completely free to use and modify?
Absolutely. It's licensed under the AGPL 3.0 license, which is a very permissive open source license. It's completely free to use, modify, and redistribute. However, the initial exercise and ingredient data has additional Creative Commons licenses, so you'll want to check those details.
Good to know. So overall, it sounds like a powerful and flexible tool for fitness enthusiasts and developers alike. The combination of a feature-rich application and a robust API is quite compelling.
Exactly. And the fact that it's self-hosted gives you complete control over your data. Plus, the active community and the readily available documentation make it a really attractive option. I'm really impressed with this project.
I agree. It seems like a great project to keep an eye on. Thanks for bringing this to our attention.
My pleasure. And that's all the time we have for today's Tech Bytes and News. Thanks for listening, and we'll see you next time. Goodbye.
Bye-bye.
Welcome to Tech Bytes and News, your daily roundup of articles featured in Hacker News. Today, we're diving into a fascinating collection of papers, covering a broad spectrum of computer science topics. We've got everything from Kalman filters to the intricacies of the Windows kernel, and even a peek into the world of LLMs. Ready to jump in? Enthusiastically?
Absolutely. Let's start with something fundamental. I'm particularly interested in the paper on Kalman filters. What's the core idea presented there?
That paper provides a simplified, intuitive derivation of the Kalman filter. It breaks down the complex mathematics into manageable steps, making it accessible to a wider audience. It's all about recursively estimating the state of a dynamic system, by combining predictions with noisy measurements. Think of it like tracking a moving object using a sensor. The filter cleverly weighs the predicted position against the actual sensor reading to get a more accurate estimate.
So it's essentially a weighted average, but with a clever way of updating the weights based on the uncertainty in both the prediction and the measurement?
Exactly. The beauty lies in how it handles uncertainty using covariance matrices. It's a recursive process, constantly refining the estimate with each new piece of information.
Interesting. Now let's shift gears to something a bit different. There are several papers here on GPU programming and optimization. What are some of the key challenges and techniques highlighted in those papers?
There's a lot on that. Many papers discuss maximizing parallel processing efficiency on GPUs. Challenges include optimizing memory access patterns to minimize latency, effectively utilizing shared memory, and managing thread synchronization. Techniques range from careful data layout strategies to using specialized instructions like warp shuffles. One paper even delves into the intricacies of cache allocation technology on Intel architectures.
I see. So it's not just about writing parallel code, but also about understanding the underlying hardware architecture and exploiting its specific features for optimal performance?
Precisely. It's a deep dive into hardware-software co-design. Another interesting aspect is the exploration of different parallel programming models and their suitability for various tasks.
And what about the papers on LLMs? What kind of insights do they offer?
Well, there are a few papers on large language models, focusing on different aspects. One paper discusses training techniques for LLMs from scratch, highlighting the challenges and best practices involved in scaling up the training process. Another delves into the architecture and efficiency of specific LLMs, like LLMA, emphasizing their open-source nature and potential for further development. There's also work on improving inference speed through techniques like quantization.
So it's a rapidly evolving field, with ongoing research into both training and optimization of these massive models?
Absolutely. The papers here represent a snapshot of the current state of the art, but the field is moving incredibly fast. We've only scratched the surface of this rich collection of papers. But hopefully, this gives you a taste of the diverse and exciting research happening in computer science.
Definitely. Thanks for the insightful overview. It's been a fascinating journey through these papers.
My pleasure. Thanks for joining us on Tech Bytes and News. We hope you enjoyed this deep dive into the world of computer science research. Until next time, goodbye.
Bye-bye.
Welcome to Tech Bytes and News, your daily roundup of articles featured in Hacker News. Today we're diving into a fascinating article. Why does integer addition approximate float multiplication? It's all about a surprisingly effective hack for approximating float multiplication using integer addition. Pretty cool, huh? Intriguing, right?
Absolutely, I'm eager to hear this. So the core idea is replacing the computationally expensive float multiplication with a simpler integer addition? How accurate is this approximation, though?
That's the million-dollar question. The article presents a function that casts floats to integers, adds them, adjusts the exponent, and then casts back to a float. The initial approximation, just adding exponents, gets you within a factor of 2. But, surprisingly, a refined version gets within 7.5% accuracy.
Whoa! 7.5% is remarkably close. What's the secret sauce? Some clever bit manipulation, I presume?
Exactly. The magic lies in understanding how floats are represented. The exponent is added directly, mirroring the logarithmic nature of multiplication. There's also a clever mantissa offset, a constant value that helps fine-tune the approximation. The article even shows a graph illustrating the relationship between log, 1 plus x, and x, which explains why this simple addition works so well.
I see. So it leverages the fact that log, 1 plus x, is approximately equal to x for a certain range. But are there any significant drawbacks to this method? The article mentions some limitations, right?
Oh yeah, there are some caveats. The biggest issue is handling exponent overflow and underflow. Underflow, especially, is a problem because it can lead to wildly inaccurate results. The article presents a more robust version that addresses underflow, but it's more complex. Also, it won't be faster than native float multiplication in most cases. and it prevents the use of tensor cores.
So while elegant in its simplicity, it's not a general-purpose replacement for float multiplication. It's more of a niche optimization, perhaps for power-constrained environments where the accuracy trade-off is acceptable. What about the mantissa adjustment? How was that constant determined?
That's a great point. The mantissa adjustment is empirically determined. The author tried various analytical approaches, but they didn't yield satisfactory results. Ultimately, they settled on a constant that minimized error across a large set of randomly generated test floats. It's a bit of a brute force approach, but it works.
It's interesting how such a seemingly simple idea can lead to such a surprisingly effective, albeit imperfect, approximation. It highlights the intricate relationship between integer and floating point arithmetic. So in summary, while not a universal solution, this integer addition method offers a potentially useful trade-off between speed, power consumption, and accuracy in specific scenarios.
Precisely. It's a clever hack that showcases the power of understanding the underlying representation of floating point numbers. While not a silver bullet, it's a fascinating example of how seemingly disparate mathematical operations can be surprisingly interconnected. Thanks for joining us on Tech Bytes and News. We hope you enjoyed this deep dive into the world of floating point approximations. Goodbye.
Bye-bye.
Welcome to Tech Bytes and News, your daily roundup of articles featured in Hacker News. Today, we're diving into a groundbreaking development in pancreatic cancer detection, a cheap and effective blood test. It's incredibly exciting.
Absolutely. Pancreatic cancer has such a dismal prognosis, largely because it's usually diagnosed at a late stage. This sounds like a game changer. What's the core technology behind this new test?
The key is nanosensors. These tiny devices, incredibly clever, detect specific proteases, enzymes that break down proteins, which are highly active in pancreatic tumors, even in their early stages. It's all about catching those telltale proteins before the cancer spreads.
So it's not detecting cancer cells directly, but rather the biochemical activity associated with them? That's a really smart approach, avoiding the limitations of traditional methods.
Precisely. The nanosensors use a magnetic nanoparticle attached to a peptide that attracts these matrix metalloproteinases. If the proteases are present and active, they cleave the peptide, releasing a fluorescent molecule. A magnet then isolates the cleaved particles, and the fluorescence intensity indicates the level of protease activity.
Ingenious. So, more fluorescence means a higher likelihood of cancer? What kind of accuracy are we talking about here?
The study showed a 73% accuracy in identifying pancreatic cancer. While not perfect, it's a significant leap forward. The test also correctly identified healthy individuals 98% of the time, and importantly, it reliably distinguished between cancer and other pancreatic diseases.
A 73% accuracy rate is impressive, considering the difficulty of early detection. But I'm curious, what's the next step? What needs to happen before this becomes a routine screening tool?
You're right to question that. The sensitivity needs improvement. Pushing that 73% higher is crucial for widespread clinical use. Further research and larger-scale trials are needed to validate the results and refine the test's performance. But the potential is enormous.
Absolutely. This could revolutionize early detection and treatment. The fact that it's a simple blood test makes it incredibly accessible and cost-effective, too. This is a huge step forward in tackling this deadly disease.
Exactly. It's a truly pragmatic solution that could save countless lives. The researchers are building on years of progress in nanotechnology and molecular biology. And this is a testament to the power of interdisciplinary collaboration. It's a very exciting time for cancer research.
I agree completely. This is a fantastic example of how innovative technology can directly impact patient outcomes. Thanks for sharing this exciting news with us.
My pleasure. And thank you to our listeners for tuning in to Tech Bytes and News. We hope you enjoyed this update on the latest advancements in cancer detection. Have a great day, and we'll catch you tomorrow with more exciting tech news.
Bye-bye.
Welcome to Tech Bytes and News, your daily roundup of articles featured in Hacker News. Today we're diving into a fascinating review of a 1934 German film, Die Welt ohne Maske, or The World Without a Mask, a quirky blend of science fiction and comedy. It's a real trip down memory lane, and a look at a surprisingly complex historical context. Get ready for some unexpected twists.
A 1934 sci-fi comedy? That sounds unusual. What's the core plot? I'm intrigued by the mention of X-ray television. Was this a serious attempt at technological prediction? Or more of a whimsical fantasy?
It's a bit of both, actually. The plot centers around Harry Peel, who also directed and produced the film, playing an unemployed electrical engineer who accidentally invents X-ray television while helping his inventor neighbor. Think madcap inventions, slapstick humor, and a dash of intrigue involving a greedy millionaire trying to steal the technology. It's a wild ride.
So accidental invention is the core of the plot? Sounds like a classic comedic trope. But the X-ray TV, that's a bold choice for 1934. What was the technological context of the time?
Exactly. The review highlights that while commercial television broadcasts were emerging in the mid-20s, it wasn't widely accessible. The film cleverly uses this backdrop to explore themes of technological advancement, access, and the potential for misuse by those in power. The contrast between the fictional X-ray TV and the reality of expensive, limited access to early television is striking.
I see. So it's not just a silly comedy, but also a commentary on social and economic inequalities? That's a surprisingly sophisticated layer for a film from that era. What about the critical reception? Did it get good reviews?
That's where things get interesting. The review mentions the film's obscurity, with limited contemporary reviews and mixed modern opinions. IMDb gives it a 5.210, but that's based on very few votes. Some critics found the humor mild, while others praised its unique blend of fantasy and adventure. It's definitely a film that divides opinion.
That's fascinating. The review also mentions Harry Peel's background, right? He wasn't just an actor, but a major action star, almost a genre unto himself. How does that influence the film?
Absolutely. Peel was a huge star, known for his death-defying stunts. But The World Without a Mask is different. While there are some action sequences, the focus is more on the comedy and the plot. The review suggests that the film's success lies in the comedic chemistry between Peel and his co-star, Kurt Vesperman. It's a departure from his usual action-packed roles, a fascinating shift in his career.
So it's a case of a famous action star successfully transitioning into comedy? That's a testament to his versatility. The review also touches on the film's historical context, particularly its production during the rise of Nazism in Germany. How does that factor into the analysis?
That's a crucial point. The review carefully navigates the complex relationship between the film, its creators, and the political climate. It notes that while some themes, like the corrupt elite exploiting the working class, resonate with Nazi propaganda, it's a mistake to label Peel or the film outright as Nazi sympathizers. The analysis is nuanced and avoids simplistic conclusions. It acknowledges Peel's party membership, but also highlights his apolitical approach in most of his films. It's a careful and thoughtful examination of a complicated historical figure.
That's a really important point. It's easy to make sweeping generalizations about art produced during that era, but the review demonstrates the need for careful contextualization and avoids simplistic labeling. It's a nuanced and responsible approach to a sensitive topic. What's your overall takeaway from this review?
It's a reminder that even seemingly simple films can offer rich layers of meaning. The World Without a Mask is more than just a quirky sci-fi comedy. It's a window into a specific time and place, a reflection of its creator's complexities, and a testament to the enduring power of cinema to explore social and technological themes. It's a film worth seeking out, if only for its historical significance and unusual blend of genres.
I completely agree. It sounds like a fascinating and surprisingly complex piece of cinematic history. Thanks for shedding light on this hidden gem.
You're welcome. And thank you to our listeners for joining us on Tech Bytes and News. We hope you enjoyed this deep dive into the world without a mask. Until next time, goodbye.
Bye-bye.
Welcome to Tech Bytes and News, your daily roundup of articles featured in Hacker News. Today, we're diving deep into the fascinating evolution of residential networking, specifically focusing on how it leveraged existing telephone lines. It's a story of innovation, limitations, and ultimately, the rise of other technologies. Let's get started.
I'm eager to hear this. So we're talking about using phone lines for internet, right? That seems unusual, given today's Wi-Fi and fiber optics.
Precisely. It's a journey through time, starting with PhoneNet in the mid-80s. Remember, Ethernet wasn't the ubiquitous standard back then. Every vendor had its own solution. Apple, for instance, initially went with AppleNet, based on XNS, but quickly abandoned it for IBM's Token Ring, which never really took off due to cost and delays. That's where PhoneNet steps in.
So PhoneNet was a workaround for Apple's networking woes? What made it so special?
It was brilliant in its simplicity. AppleTalk, while sophisticated in its zero-configuration approach, used proprietary cables. The hobbyist cleverly adapted it to use existing telephone wiring, creating a cheaper alternative. It was a huge success, especially among Mac users, but it had a major drawback. It couldn't coexist with voice calls, needing a dedicated line.
I see. So a single-line household was out of luck? That's a significant limitation. What came next?
Exactly. The 90s saw the rise of IP over Ethernet, shifting focus to new physical media. But residential wiring posed a challenge. Unlike commercial buildings, homes had parallel wired telephone jacks, creating reflection problems. Enter TUT systems and their pulse position modulation, PPM solution. This was a game changer.
PPM? How did that solve the reflection issue?
PPM encoded data using the spacing between pulses, allowing reflections to dissipate between transmissions, even at higher byte rates. This became Home PNA 1.0, capable of 1 megabit per second. Later, Home PNA 2.0 used QAM, boosting speeds to 10 megabits per second and allowing coexistence with voice calls and early ADSL. It was a really clever solution.
So Home PNA was a significant improvement. But why didn't it become the standard?
That's a great question. While marketed for single-family homes, TUT envisioned Home PNA primarily for multifamily dwellings, leveraging the common wiring closet setup. This led to the unusual concept of Home PNA hubs, essentially independent networks for each apartment unit. But Wi-Fi was on the rise, and it ultimately overshadowed Home PNA.
Ah, the relentless march of Wi-Fi. What followed Home PNA?
G.hn. It's a more sophisticated standard, supporting various media, telephone, coaxial, power line, and even fiber. It's used extensively, though its name isn't exactly catchy. It was heavily influenced by the needs of the set-top box industry, particularly for multi-room DVR systems. It's a fascinating story of technology adapting to market demands.
So G.hn unified various home communication devices? What about other competitors?
Yes, and we also have Maca, similar to G.hn but adopted by different companies. And then there's HomePlug, primarily for power line networking, which is still around, though its organization ceased operations in 2016. It's a bit of a fragmented landscape.
So in the end, which technology won out?
Well, it's not a clear winner. G.hn, Mocha, and HomePlug all coexist, often integrated into ISP equipment. But the consumer market largely favors HomePlug for its ease of use, despite its occasional unreliability. However, Wi-Fi's speed and reliability often make these wired solutions less appealing.
Interesting. So despite all this innovation, Wi-Fi ultimately reigns supreme? It's a bit ironic, considering the initial struggles with networking.
Absolutely. It's a testament to Wi-Fi's continuous improvement and the convenience it offers. While these older technologies persist in embedded systems and some ISP setups, their consumer relevance is waning. It's a compelling narrative of technological evolutions. But there's still potential for G.hn over fiber optics, which could be a game changer. We'll have to wait and see.
That's a fascinating point to end on. Thanks for this insightful journey through the history of residential networking.
You're very welcome. And that's all the time we have for today's Tech Bytes and News. Thanks for listening, and we'll catch you next time. Goodbye.
Bye-bye.
Welcome to Tech Bytes and News, your daily roundup of articles featured in Hacker News. Today we're diving deep into Wasm Cloud, a CNCF project revolutionizing application deployment and management. It's incredibly exciting stuff.
I'm eager to hear this. So Wasm Cloud. What's the core idea? Is it just another containerization solution or something more radical?
It's way more than just another container solution. Think of it as a WASM native orchestrator. It lets you build, manage, and scale WebAssembly applications across any environment. Cloud, Kubernetes, Edge, you name it. The key is its focus on WebAssembly components.
WebAssembly components? So instead of entire applications, we're deploying smaller, more modular pieces? What are the advantages?
Exactly. This modularity is a game changer. It leads to faster development cycles because components are reusable and polyglot. You can write them in any language that compiles to WASM. Plus, central maintenance becomes a breeze. You're managing components, not thousands of individual apps. And it integrates with everything. Kubernetes, AWS, Azure, GCP, it works.
That sounds amazing for maintainability. But what about portability? Can these WASM apps truly run anywhere?
Absolutely. That's one of WASM Cloud's killer features. You write once and you run everywhere. Linux, macOS, Windows, ARM, x86. No rebuilds needed. The runtime handles the differences. It's truly portable.
Okay, I'm sold on the build and compose aspects. But how does the runtime work? What about scaling and reliability?
The runtime is equally impressive. We're talking sub-millisecond start times, vertical auto-scaling, and horizontal scaling with automated failover. It's designed for extreme reliability and scalability. And it handles deployments across multiple clouds and regions seamlessly, ensuring high availability.
So it addresses those common headaches, idle infrastructure, app maintenance, and distributed deployments, all at once? That's a bold claim.
It is, but the architecture supports it. The use cases highlighted on their site, American Express, Adobe, Akamai, Machine Metrics, show real-world success stories. They're using WASM Cloud to solve exactly those problems you mentioned. They're using it for everything from serverless platforms to edge computing in factories.
I see. But isn't there a learning curve? Is it easy to get started?
They have a great getting started guide and a CLI called Wash that simplifies the process. There are also plenty of examples to help you build your first component. The documentation is quite comprehensive too. It's not a trivial undertaking, but the potential payoff is huge.
So in short, WASM Cloud offers a compelling alternative to traditional application deployment methods, especially for microservices and distributed systems. It leverages the power of WebAssembly to achieve unparalleled portability, scalability, and maintainability.
Precisely. It's a truly exciting project, and its adoption by major companies like American Express and Adobe speaks volumes about its potential. It's definitely worth checking out if you're looking to modernize your application infrastructure. Thanks for joining us on Tech Bytes and News. We hope you enjoyed this deep dive into the world of WASM Cloud. Goodbye.
Bye-bye.
Welcome to Tech Bytes and News, your daily roundup of articles featured in Hacker News. Today, we're diving deep into a fascinating article about speeding up Ruby's Foreign Function Interface, FFI, using tiny JIT compilers. It's a game changer, folks.
A faster FFI? I'm all ears. I've always felt that FFI in Ruby, while useful, comes with a performance penalty. What's the core idea here?
Exactly. The author argues that while we should write as much Ruby as possible, leveraging YJIT's optimization, sometimes native code is unavoidable. But instead of a full-blown native extension, the solution is a tiny JIT compiler that generates machine code on the fly to handle the FFI call. Think of it as a super efficient wrapper.
A JIT compiler for just the FFI call? That's clever. So how much faster are we talking?
The benchmark uses Strelin as an example. Directly calling Ruby's string hashtag byte size is the fastest, naturally. But the proposed FJIT, FFIJIT approach comes in second, even beating a C extension implementation. And it's significantly faster than the standard FFI approach, over 2 times faster, in fact.
Wow, that's a huge improvement. But how does this magic work? I mean, generating machine code at runtime sounds complex.
It leverages existing gems like 8arch64 and Fisk for code generation, and JIT buffer for executable memory allocation. The key is that it uses RJIT, Ruby's internal JIT compiler, which is getting extracted as a gem. This provides the necessary information to map Ruby types to native types, allowing seamless integration.
So RJIT is the glue that makes this possible? That's a really smart use of existing infrastructure. But are there any limitations?
Oh, absolutely. The current proof of concept is ARM64 only, needs an x86-64 backend, and only handles single parameter functions with single return values. It also requires specific Ruby flags for now. But the author is confident these are surmountable challenges.
I see. So it's not production ready yet, but the potential is enormous. It's exciting to see this kind of innovation in the Ruby ecosystem. It really speaks to the power of JIT compilation.
Precisely. It's a testament to the flexibility of Ruby and the ingenuity of the developer. Imagine the possibilities, bridging the gap between Ruby's elegance and the performance of native code without the usual FFI overhead. This could be a game changer for performance-critical applications.
Definitely. This could significantly improve the performance of many applications that rely on FFI calls without requiring extensive rewriting in C. It's a win-win for developers who want to keep their code primarily in Ruby.
Absolutely. And that's the beauty of it. It allows developers to adhere to the write as much Ruby as possible philosophy while still achieving near-native performance, a truly elegant solution to a long-standing problem. Thanks for joining us on Tech Bytes and News. We hope you enjoyed this deep dive into the world of tiny JTs and faster FFIs. Have a great day.
Bye-bye.
Welcome to Tech Bytes and News, your daily roundup of articles featured in Hacker News. Today, we're diving deep into the fascinating world of the marshmallow test and its implications for parenting, as explored in a recent blog post. Let's get started.
I'm eager to hear this. The marshmallow test is so iconic, but I've always wondered about its limitations. What's the main takeaway from this blog post?
The core argument is that the marshmallow test's initial conclusion, that delayed gratification equals success, is far too simplistic. It overlooks crucial environmental factors.
Like what? Give me the specifics.
Well, the blog post highlights that a child's ability to wait isn't solely about willpower. It's heavily influenced by the stability and reliability of their home environment. Kids from stable homes, where promises are kept, are more likely to wait. It's a learned behavior, a strategy based on experience, not just inherent self-control.
So it's about trust? That's a really interesting point.
Exactly. If a child consistently sees adults breaking promises, why would they trust that second marshmallow will actually appear? It's not a character flaw. It's a rational response to an unreliable environment. The author uses the example of their own child, showing how consistent routines and kept promises build trust and encourage waiting.
I see. And what about socioeconomic factors? Does the blog post touch on that?
Absolutely. It points out that children from wealthier families often wait longer, not because they possess superior self-control, but because their environment offers greater security. If basic needs are consistently met, waiting for an extra marshmallow is less risky. For kids from low-income families, grabbing what's available when it's available is a survival mechanism, not a lack of discipline.
That's a powerful observation. It really shifts the focus from individual traits to systemic influences. So what else does the blog post emphasize?
The importance of modeling behavior. The author emphasizes that parents need to consistently demonstrate patience and follow through on their promises. If a parent tells a child to wait, but then loses their patience themselves, the message is contradictory. It's about living the values you want to teach.
Right, completely agree. It's not just about what you say, but what you do. What about cultural differences?
The blog post also acknowledges that cultural norms significantly impact a child's approach to delayed gratification. In some cultures, waiting is ingrained in daily life, while in others, instant gratification is more prevalent. This highlights that the marshmallow test isn't a universal measure of character. It's influenced by the cultural context.
That's a crucial point, often overlooked. So what's the ultimate message here? What should parents take away from this?
The main takeaway is that parents create the environment in which their children learn to wait or not. It's about building trust, consistency, and predictability. By keeping promises, establishing routines, and modeling patience, parents can foster an environment where their children feel safe enough to delay gratification. It's not about forcing self-control, but about creating a supportive and reliable world for them to grow in.
It's a much more nuanced and insightful perspective than the simplistic interpretation of the original marshmallow test. A really thought-provoking piece.
Absolutely. It reminds us that parenting is about so much more than just teaching individual skills. It's about building a foundation of trust and security, and that, ultimately, is what allows children to thrive. Thanks for joining us on Tech Bytes and News. Have a great day.
Bye-bye.
Welcome to Tech Bytes and News, your daily roundup of articles featured in Hacker News. Today, we're diving into a fascinating personal project, a homebrewed web-based coding environment called ThinkServer. It's a really cool story, and I'm excited to share it. Let's get started.
I'm all ears. So, what's the core idea behind ThinkServer? Why did the author build it?
Essentially, it's a self-hosted alternative to platforms like Glitch. The author, dissatisfied with Glitch's limitations, particularly around Elm development, infrequent login issues, and a less-than-stellar mobile experience, decided to build their own solution. It's a testament to the power of personal projects.
That's impressive. So what's under the hood? What technologies did they use?
The back end is Django, managing project metadata, just names and creation times. Each project lives in its own directory. The front end, the actual editor, is built with Elm. Clever use of existing tools. It's all served via subdomains using a wildcard Let's Encrypt certificate. Very efficient.
A wildcard certificate? Smart move. That simplifies management significantly. And what about project organization? How does it handle templates and project naming?
Yes. The project naming is quite whimsical. Instead of random words, the author uses 3 food names starting with different letters of the alphabet. It's a unique approach, and for templates, there's a handy remix feature, allowing easy project creation from pre-built templates for things like Elm projects or common libraries.
That's a fun twist on project naming. And the editor itself? What's the user experience like?
The Elm-based editor is a 3-column layout. File tree and logs on one side, the code editor in the middle, and a live preview on the right. Automatic saving and make file execution on file changes are built in. Very slick. There's even a shell command runner and a simplified Elm package installer, all for enhanced convenience.
So it's essentially a fully featured IDE in the browser. Impressive. But what about version control? That's a crucial aspect of any coding environment.
Initially, there wasn't any. But the author recently added Git integration using Forgejo and the Jujutsu JJ version control system. A great addition. Jujutsu's approach, focusing on the working directory state, simplifies the commit process significantly.
Jujutsu sounds interesting. I'll have to look into that. So the whole system is open source? Can we check it out?
Absolutely. The code is available on the author's Forgejo instance. It's a generous contribution to the community. However, it's important to note that it's not intended as a collaborative project, and the author isn't accepting feature requests. Understandably, they're also wary of security vulnerabilities.
Fair enough. It's a personal project, after all. But still, a really impressive undertaking. It highlights the power of building your own tools when existing solutions don't quite fit the bill. A great example of creative problem solving.
Exactly. And that's what makes this project so compelling. It's a testament to the ingenuity and resourcefulness of individual developers. Thanks for joining us on Tech Bytes and News. We hope you enjoyed this deep dive into ThinkServer. Have a great day.
Bye-bye.
Welcome to Tech Bytes and News, your daily roundup of articles featured in Hacker News. Today, we're diving deep into a fascinating article about hiding arbitrary data within a seemingly innocuous emoji. It's all about exploiting Unicode's variation selectors. Pretty cool, huh?
Absolutely. I saw the Hacker News thread, and the idea of encoding unlimited data in a single emoji blew my mind. So how does this actually work?
Well, it leverages Unicode's variation selectors. These are code points that don't have a visual representation on their own, but they modify the appearance of the preceding character. Think of them as invisible modifiers. There are 256 of them, enough to represent a byte of data.
I see. So you're essentially attaching these invisible modifiers to a character, like an emoji, to encode data? But how do you get around the fact that they're invisible?
Exactly. The clever part is that while they're invisible to the human eye, they're still present in the character's code. The article shows how you can string together multiple variation selectors after a base character, even a regular character, not just an emoji, to represent a sequence of bytes. Each variation selector corresponds to a byte.
That's ingenious. So you could, in theory, encode a whole message within a single emoji, right? But wouldn't that make the emoji incredibly long?
Not necessarily long visually, but the underlying code would be extensive. The article uses the example of encoding hello using variation selectors after a smiley emoji. It looks like a normal smiley, but the hidden data is there. The article provides Rust code to both encode and decode this hidden data.
So the Rust code essentially maps each byte to a specific variation selector, and then concatenates them. And decoding is just the reverse process, right? It's like a simple substitution cipher, but at the Unicode level.
Precisely. It's a surprisingly simple yet effective technique. The author even points out a couple of potential nefarious applications. One is bypassing human content filters, since the data is invisible to the naked eye. Another is watermarking text, allowing you to trace leaked information back to its source.
That's a bit unsettling, isn't it? I mean, the potential for misuse is pretty clear. But the article also mentions LLMs and how they handle this hidden data. What's the deal there?
Yeah, that's a really interesting point. The author tested it with several LLMs. While the tokenizers generally preserve the variation selectors, the models themselves don't seem to automatically decode them. However, when paired with a code interpreter, some LLMs, like Gemini 2 Flash, can actually decode the hidden message.
Wow, that's fascinating. So even though the LLMs don't inherently understand the encoding, they can be made to decode it with the right tools. It highlights the limitations and capabilities of these models simultaneously.
Exactly. It's a testament to both the ingenuity of the encoding technique and the evolving capabilities of LLMs. It also underscores the importance of considering such vulnerabilities when designing systems that rely on LLMs for security or content moderation. It's a really thought-provoking article, and I highly recommend checking out the full text and the code examples.
Definitely. Thanks for breaking it down. This is a great example of how seemingly obscure technical details can have significant implications.
You're welcome. And that's all the time we have for today's Tech Bytes and News. Thanks for listening, and we'll catch you next time. Goodbye.
Bye-bye.
Welcome to Tech Bytes and News, your daily roundup of articles featured in Hacker News. Today, we're diving deep into the evolution of the WHOIS protocol to RDP, a significant shift in how we access domain name registration data. It's a pretty exciting development, wouldn't you say?
Absolutely. The old WHOIS system, while functional for a long time, was showing its age. I mean, 35 years is a long time for any protocol to remain unchanged. What were the biggest shortcomings, that led to this change?
Right. The WHOIS protocol, or Port 43 as it's known, had several major limitations. Think about it. No standardized format, making data interpretation a nightmare. No support for internationalization, excluding a huge portion of the global community. And a complete lack of authentication, leaving it vulnerable to abuse. Plus, it was basically just a lookup system. No searching, no advanced queries, nothing.
Wow, that sounds incredibly clunky by today's standards. So RDP is the solution, right? What's the big difference?
Precisely. RDP, or the Registration Data Access Protocol, is the modern replacement. It addresses all those old WHOIS issues. It has a standardized format, supports internationalization, and crucially, includes user authentication. It's also far more powerful, allowing for complex searches and queries. It's a huge leap forward in terms of security and functionality.
So this transition wasn't exactly a snap of the fingers, was it? I mean, implementing a new protocol across the entire internet? That's a massive undertaking.
You're absolutely right. It's a multi-phased approach. The first step, which was completed by August 2019, mandated that all GTLD registries and ICANN-accredited registrars offer RDAP alongside WHOIS. Now the focus is on amending the registry agreements and registrar accreditation agreements to formally incorporate RDAP, including service-level agreements. It's a complex process involving negotiations with various stakeholder groups.
I see. So it's not just a technical change, it's a legal and contractual one as well. That makes sense. But what about the users? How are they supposed to adapt to this new system?
That's a great point. ICANN is committed to raising global awareness about the transition. They're providing resources and information on the RDAP webpage, and they even had sessions at ICANN 66 in Montreal to educate users. The goal is a smooth transition with minimal disruption.
That's reassuring. It sounds like a lot of work went into this, and it's great to see such a significant improvement in the system. It's a testament to the ongoing evolution of the Internet's infrastructure.
Exactly. It's a huge step forward for data security, accessibility, and overall functionality. And it's a great example of how the internet community works together to improve its core systems. Thanks for joining us on Tech Bytes and News. We hope you enjoyed this deep dive into the world of domain name registration data. Until next time, goodbye.
Bye-bye.
Welcome to Tech Bytes and News, your daily roundup of articles featured in Hacker News. Today, we're diving deep into Passmark's year-on-year CPU benchmark data. It's fascinating stuff, really. The sheer volume of data they've collected is incredible.
Absolutely. I'm particularly interested in how they've managed to track CPU performance over such a long period. What's the core methodology behind their year-on-year analysis?
Right, so it's all based on their performance test software. They've been collecting data from version 5 all the way up to version 11, and they update their graphs bi-weekly. That's every 2 weeks. It's a massive undertaking.
Bi-weekly updates? Wow, that's impressive. And what about the data itself? Is it just raw numbers, or is there more to it?
Oh, it's much more than just raw numbers. They break it down by CPU class, high-end, mid-range, low-end, and even show best value options. They also have separate charts for single-thread performance, which is crucial for many applications.
I see, so they're not just looking at overall performance, but also at specific aspects like single-threaded performance. That's a really smart approach. What are some of the limitations they mention?
Good question. They acknowledge that the data is heavily weighted towards Windows users, especially in the earlier years because performance tests primarily ran on Windows. Also, before 2021, they only included x86 processors, excluding ARM architectures. They've addressed this in more recent updates, though.
That's a valid point. Any other caveats? I mean, how accurate can these benchmarks really be, considering the diverse range of hardware and software configurations?
You're right to be cautious. They mention that the data for the current year is less accurate at the beginning, as it takes time to accumulate enough results. And of course, user-submitted benchmarks always have some inherent variability. But overall, the sheer scale of their data makes it a pretty robust resource.
It's a valuable resource, for sure. I'm impressed by their transparency in highlighting the limitations. It adds to the credibility of their work. What about the future? Define that. Do they plan on expanding their data collection in any way?
That's a great question. Given their bi-weekly updates and continuous improvement, I'd expect them to continue expanding their dataset, potentially incorporating more platforms and architectures, maybe even more granular data on specific hardware components. The possibilities are exciting.
Definitely exciting. Thanks for breaking this down for us. This has been a really insightful look into Passmark's CPU benchmark data.
My pleasure. And that's all the time we have for today's Tech Bytes and News. Thanks for listening, and we'll catch you next time. Bye!
Bye-bye.
Welcome to Tech Bytes and News, your daily roundup of articles featured in Hacker News. Today, we're diving into NESFAB, a revolutionary new programming language for creating NES games. It's incredibly exciting.
I've heard whispers about this. So what makes NESFAB so special? Is it just another retro gaming tool, or is there something truly innovative here?
Oh, it's far more than just another tool. The core innovation is its focus on performance and ease of use. It's designed to generate significantly faster 6502 machine code than existing compilers like GCC and LLVM, potentially making it the best performing 6502 compiler out there. And it does this while being far more ergonomic than traditional C programming for NES development.
Wow, that's a bold claim. How does it achieve such superior performance? Is it some kind of magical optimization algorithm?
Not magic, but clever compiler design. The article doesn't delve into the specifics of the algorithm, but the results speak for themselves. They've shown benchmarks comparing it to other compilers, and NESFAB consistently outperforms them. It's a testament to the developer's expertise in 6502 architecture.
So, beyond speed, what other features make it stand out? I mean, writing NES games is notoriously difficult, right?
Absolutely. That's where NESFAB shines. It handles the tedious aspects automatically. Think automatic bank switching. A huge headache in NES development. NESFAB manages this seamlessly, abstracting away the complexities. It also simplifies asset loading, eliminating the need for those annoying conversion scripts. Just drop your assets in. and it handles the rest.
That's a huge time saver. And what about tools for level design? Creating NES game maps is usually a nightmare.
They've got you covered there too. NESFAB integrates seamlessly with MapFab, a dedicated level editor. It's a complete ecosystem for NES game development. It's brilliant.
It sounds almost too good to be true. Are there any downsides? Is it fully mature? Or are there any limitations?
Well, it's currently in beta, so there might be some bugs and missing features. But the core functionality is there, and the performance gains are undeniable. The fact that it's open source and actively developed is a huge plus. You can contribute, report bugs, and even help shape its future.
That's reassuring. So where can our listeners get their hands on NESFAB?
The best way is to compile it from the source code on GitHub. They also provide binary releases from time to time for those who prefer a simpler approach. But honestly, compiling from source is the way to go to ensure you have the latest version and features.
Excellent. This sounds like a game changer for retro game development. Thanks for breaking it down for us.
My pleasure. And that's all the time we have for today's Tech Bytes and News. Thanks for listening, and we'll see you next time. Goodbye.
Bye-bye.
Welcome to Tech Bytes and News, your daily roundup of articles featured in Hacker News. Today, we're diving deep into a fascinating security vulnerability, a method to leak the email address of any YouTube user, a discovery that earned a hefty bug bounty. It's a multi-stage exploit, so buckle up.
Whoa, that sounds intense. So how does this whole thing work? Is it some kind of direct database access or something more intricate?
It's definitely more intricate, a clever chaining of vulnerabilities. It starts with a seemingly innocuous feature, blocking a user on YouTube. See, blocking someone on YouTube reveals their obfuscated Gaia ID, a unique Google account identifier. That's the first piece of the puzzle.
Okay, so they get their Gaia ID exposed. But how does that lead to their email?
That's where things get really interesting. The researcher found that by accessing a specific YouTube endpoint, /YouTube AI /V1 /livechat /getItem context menu, they could extract the Gaia ID without even needing to block the user. This endpoint is used for generating context menus, and it's leaking sensitive data.
So they're getting the Gaia ID from a seemingly unrelated function? That's a sneaky vulnerability. But still, how do they get the email address?
Right. The next step involves a completely different Google service, Pixel Recorder. This service, used for recording screen activity on Pixel phones, has an endpoint that takes a Gaia ID and returns the associated email address. It's a completely separate system, but it's linked through the common thread of the Gaia ID.
I see. So they're essentially using one service to get the ID and another to translate that ID into an email. That's brilliant, but also terrifying. What about notifications, owner? Wouldn't the user get an email saying someone shared a recording with them?
That's a great point. Initially, yes, the victim would receive a notification. However, the researcher discovered that by manipulating the title of the shared recording, making it incredibly long, like 2.5 million characters long, they could bypass the notification system. It seems the notification email generation is sensitive to the length of the recording title.
Wow, that's unexpected. So they essentially overloaded the system to prevent the notification? Clever, but also a bit of a brute force approach, wouldn't you say?
Yeah, you could say that. It's not the most elegant solution, but it worked. The whole exploit chain is a bit clunky, but the impact is significant. A researcher reported this to Google, and they've since patched the vulnerabilities. But it highlights the importance of thorough security testing across all Google services.
Absolutely. It's a reminder that seemingly unrelated services can have unexpected connections, and vulnerabilities can be chained together in surprising ways. This whole thing really underscores the importance of comprehensive security audits and responsible disclosure.
Exactly. And the researcher was rewarded handsomely for their efforts, receiving a total of $10,633, a testament to the value of responsible security research. Thanks for joining us on Tech Bytes and News. We'll catch you next time with more fascinating tech news. Goodbye.
Bye-bye.
Welcome to Tech Bytes and News, your daily roundup of articles featured in Hacker News. Today, we're diving into a fascinating piece about the late Professor Donald Shoup and his profound impact on urban planning, specifically regarding parking. It's a story about how one man's seemingly mundane focus transformed cities worldwide.
Absolutely. I've heard whispers of this Shopista movement, but I'm eager to hear the full story. What was Professor Shoup's central argument?
In short, Shoup argued that parking is almost always too cheap. His magnum opus, The High Cost of Free Parking, highlights the hidden costs of free curb parking, the time wasted circling for a spot, the traffic congestion, and the environmental impact. He showed how this tragedy of the commons leads to massive inefficiencies.
So the solution wasn't more parking, but smarter pricing? That's counterintuitive, isn't it? I mean, most people just assume more parking solves the problem.
Exactly. Shoup proposed demand-based pricing for curb parking. Think of it like this. If parking is expensive enough, there will always be at least one spot available. No more circling. Plus, fluctuating prices incentivize people to use public transport or adjust their travel times. It's elegant in its simplicity.
I see. But wasn't the implementation of this idea met with resistance? People don't like paying for something they've always gotten for free, right?
You're right, there was significant resistance. Shoup cleverly addressed this by introducing parking benefits districts. The revenue from paid parking is reinvested in local improvements. Better sidewalks, street trees, cleaner streets. This makes the community see the value and support the pricing.
That's brilliant. It's a win-win. But the article also mentions minimum off-street parking requirements. What's the issue with those?
Oh, those are a huge problem. These mandates force developers to build far more parking than is actually needed, driving up construction costs and, ultimately, housing prices. It's incredibly wasteful and contributes to urban sprawl. Shoup's work showed how these requirements are often based on flawed data and pseudoscience.
So it sounds like Shoup's ideas are gaining traction. The article mentions a Shopista movement. How did that even happen?
Well, it started organically. His book became a sensation among city planners, and a Facebook group formed, initially just for venting, but it grew into a powerful network of like-minded individuals pushing for change. The movement's success is also due to Shoup's dedication to mentoring and training the next generation of urban planners.
That's inspiring. It's a testament to the power of a single, focused, and well-reasoned idea. So what's the current state of things? Are Shoup's ideas widely adopted now?
Absolutely. Many cities are now abolishing minimum parking requirements and implementing demand-based pricing. The article highlights examples in California, New Zealand, and even internationally. It's a global movement now, and it all started with one professor's dedication to a seemingly mundane topic. It's truly remarkable.
It's a fantastic story, a real David and Goliath tale. It shows that even seemingly small changes can have a huge impact on our urban environments. Thanks for sharing this insightful piece.
My pleasure. And a big thank you to our listeners for tuning in to Tech Bytes and News. We hope you found this discussion as engaging as we did. Until next time, goodbye.
Bye-bye.
Welcome to Tech Bytes and News, your daily roundup of articles featured in Hacker News. Today we're diving into a fascinating article. It's time to rethink 6G. It challenges the conventional wisdom of the telecom industry, suggesting that the relentless pursuit of ever higher bandwidth might be, well, unnecessary. Intriguing, right?
Absolutely. I've always been skeptical of the hype surrounding each new generation of mobile networks. The article points out that data growth is slowing, which is a huge shift from the decades-long assumption of exponential growth. What's the core argument?
The core argument is that current consumer applications simply don't need the massive bandwidth 6G promises. Think about it. Even high-bandwidth applications like 4K video streaming, or even the demanding Microsoft Flight Simulator 2024, only require a fraction of 1 gigabit per second. Most people are already saturated at much lower speeds.
That's a compelling point. The article uses the analogy of airspeed in commercial air travel. We haven't seen a significant increase in airspeed for decades, even though the technology to go faster exists. It's a great illustration of how technological advancement doesn't always translate to increased consumer demand.
Exactly. And the article backs this up with data. Charts showing mobile and landline data growth reveal a consistent decline in the rate of growth over the past decade. This suggests we're approaching a plateau, where further increases in speed become largely imperceptible to the average user. It's a paradigm shift.
But what about future technologies? The article mentions things like autonomous vehicles, the metaverse, and AI. Won't those require significantly more bandwidth?
The article addresses that directly. While some future applications could potentially demand higher bandwidth, there's no concrete evidence to suggest they'll require the massive increases predicted for 6G. Autonomous vehicles, for instance, don't seem to need much more than a decent 5G connection. Even the metaverse, even if it takes off, is estimated to need bandwidth within the capabilities of current 5G networks. It's all about scaling existing technologies, not inventing entirely new ones.
So what are the implications of this? If the need for massive bandwidth expansion is overstated, what does that mean for the telecom industry?
The article paints a picture of a major industry shift. We might see less investment in 6G, more focus on cost-cutting and improving existing services, and a potential restructuring of the telecom landscape. It even suggests that the focus might shift from technological innovation to price and customer service, much like the budget airline industry. A fascinating prospect.
It's a bold prediction, but the data presented is compelling. The article also touches on the regulatory implications. Less need for spectrum auctions, potentially fewer operators, and a shift in policy goals from chasing the highest speeds to ensuring adequate coverage for everyone. A more equitable approach, perhaps?
Precisely. The article concludes by highlighting the need to address the digital divide. Instead of focusing on ever faster speeds for a select few, the industry should prioritize expanding coverage to underserved areas, using cost-effective solutions like satellite internet and improved indoor coverage, a more sustainable and socially responsible approach.
It's a thought-provoking article, to say the least. It challenges us to rethink our assumptions about technological progress and its impact on society. Thanks for breaking it down for us.
My pleasure. And that's all the time we have for today's Tech Bytes and News. Join us tomorrow for another insightful discussion. Goodbye.
Bye-bye.
Welcome to Tech Bytes and News, your daily roundup of articles featured in Hacker News. Today, we're diving deep into the fascinating world of Nixos and its claim to reproducible builds. The question is it truly reproducible? Let's get started.
Absolutely. The article challenges the long-held belief that NixOS guarantees bitwise reproducibility, right? It's a pretty bold claim to unravel.
Precisely. The core issue is that while Nix's functional package manager model aims for reproducibility by controlling build environments, for example, it doesn't inherently guarantee it. A simple example shows how easily you can create a non-deterministic Nix package using the $random variable. It's a bit of a gotcha.
So the marketing around reproducible builds and deployments was a bit misleading, at least historically. The article mentions this phrase was even on the NixOS website until 2023. That's a pretty big admission, isn't it?
It certainly is. This led to some friction with the Reproducible Builds group, who are dedicated to achieving bitwise reproducibility across the board. The tension highlights the difference between the ideal and the reality of reproducibility in practice. It's a complex issue.
And the scale of NIX-PKGS makes comprehensive testing incredibly difficult. We're talking about roughly 100,000 packages. That's a massive undertaking. Unlike Debian, which has extensive reproducibility monitoring, NixOS lacks that kind of systematic approach.
Exactly. The sheer size presents a significant hurdle. But the article then introduces some exciting research. A PhD study analyzed 6 years of NIX-PKGS revisions, recompiling everything to assess reproducibility. Amazing work.
I'm intrigued. What were the key findings? Did they find NixOS to be a complete failure in terms of reproducibility?
Not at all. The results were actually quite impressive. The reproducibility rate steadily climbed from 69% in 2017 to around 91% in 2023. That's a huge improvement. Considering the scale, that's a remarkable achievement. It shows that high bitwise reproducibility is possible at scale, even if it's not guaranteed out of the box.
Wow, 91%! That's significantly higher than I expected. So, what were the main reasons for the remaining 9% of non-reproducible builds?
The study identified several common culprits: embedded dates, unnamed outputs, environment variables, and build IDs. These are all sources of non-determinism that can creep into builds. It's interesting that even seemingly minor details can have a big impact.
It highlights the importance of meticulous attention to detail. Even with a system like NixOS, you still need to be mindful of these potential pitfalls. It's not a silver bullet, but it's getting pretty close.
Precisely. The research suggests that there's still room for improvement, but the progress is undeniable. This high reproducibility rate has significant implications for trusting pre-built packages from caches, which is a crucial aspect of Nix's efficiency. Projects like Trustix are already exploring distributed cache solutions that leverage this improved reproducibility.
So while NixOS doesn't magically guarantee bitwise reproducibility for every single package, the research shows it's getting remarkably close, and the improvements are significant. It's a testament to the power of continuous improvement and the importance of rigorous testing.
Absolutely. And it underscores the ongoing need for community involvement and further research in this area. Thanks for joining us on Tech Bytes and News. We hope you enjoyed this deep dive into the world of NixOS and reproducible builds. Have a great day.
Bye-bye.
Welcome to Tech Bytes and News, your daily roundup of articles featured in Hacker News. Today, we're diving into a truly amazing discovery: the detection of the most energetic neutrino ever recorded.
Wow, that sounds incredible. What makes this neutrino so special? Was it just a matter of sheer luck, or is there something more to it?
It's a combination of both, I'd say. Pure luck in detecting it, but the significance lies in the sheer energy of the particle. 120 PeV. That's 20 times more powerful than any previously detected neutrino.
20 times! That's mind-boggling. Where did this behemoth come from? And how did they even detect it?
That's the exciting part. It was spotted by the KM3 net detector, a massive underwater telescope located in the Mediterranean Sea. Think of it as a giant net. But instead of fish, it catches neutrinos. The neutrino's origin is likely a distant galaxy, but pinpointing the exact source is still a challenge.
An underwater telescope? That's brilliant. How does that even work? I mean, neutrinos are notoriously difficult to detect.
Exactly. They're incredibly elusive. KM3 net works by detecting the faint light emitted when a high-energy neutrino interacts with matter. In this case, the water itself. The light is picked up by thousands of sensitive detectors, and the pattern of light reveals the neutrino's energy and trajectory.
So this wasn't an immediate detection, right? I read that it took some time to confirm.
Right. The detection happened in February 2023, but the team only confirmed it early in 2024 after careful analysis. They had to rule out any instrumental glitches or other weird phenomena before announcing it. It's science, it takes time to be sure.
I see. And what about the energy levels? You mentioned 120 PeV. How does that compare to other particles?
Well, the most energetic particle ever detected was a cosmic ray, the so-called "oh my god" particle, at a whopping 320,000 PeV. But this neutrino is still incredibly energetic, and it's the most energetic neutrino ever observed. It opens up new avenues for understanding high-energy astrophysical processes.
Absolutely. This discovery really highlights the power of these massive detectors, doesn't it? It's like opening a new window into the universe.
Precisely. KM3net is still under construction, but even in its incomplete state, it's already making groundbreaking discoveries. Imagine what it will be capable of once fully operational. It's a testament to human ingenuity and our relentless pursuit of knowledge.
It's truly inspiring. This is a huge step forward in neutrino astronomy. Thanks for sharing this exciting news.
My pleasure. And thank you for listening to Tech Bytes and News. We hope you enjoyed this update on the record-breaking neutrino. Join us next time for more exciting breakthroughs in science and technology. Goodbye.
Bye-bye.
Welcome to Tech Bytes and News, your daily roundup of articles featured in Hacker News. Today, we're diving deep into IMAP Sync, a powerful command line tool for migrating and backing up IMAP email accounts. It's version 2.290, by the way, a seriously robust piece of software.
Wow, sounds intense. So what exactly is IMAP Sync, and why should our listeners care? I mean, we all have emails, right?
Exactly. IMAP Sync is essentially your email migration superhero. It lets you move all your emails safely and efficiently from one IMAP account to another. Think of it as a highly specialized, incremental, and recursive file copier, but for your emails. It works across networks, locally, you name it.
Incremental and recursive. Lay that on me.
Sure. Incremental means you can pause and resume a transfer anytime without duplicating data. It's incredibly efficient. Recursive means it handles the entire folder hierarchy, including subfolders. A complete copy, top to bottom.
That's amazing. So it's not just a simple copy-paste operation?
Not at all. It's far more sophisticated. It understands the nuances of IMAP, handling things like flags and dates correctly. It runs on Windows, Linux, and Mac OS, making it incredibly versatile.
But what are its limitations? Nothing's perfect, right?
Right. IMAP Sync doesn't handle contacts or calendars. Most email systems don't use IMAP for that. Also, it's not ideal for two-way syncing between active accounts. You'd want something like OfflineMap or MBSYNC for that. And finally, it only works with IMAP servers. You can't back up to a local directory directly.
Okay, I see. So if I want to move my emails from Gmail to a new provider, IMAP Sync is a great choice, but I'd need other tools for contacts and calendars?
Precisely. And the developer, Gilles Lemeral, offers excellent support. He even personally replies to emails. He's been doing this for over 20 years, so he knows his stuff.
That's impressive. What about pricing? Is it free?
It's a commercial product, but with a 30-day money-back guarantee. You can get the software alone for €60, or get it bundled with lifetime support for €120. The support alone is also €120, which makes sense considering the depth of his expertise and the time commitment involved.
Makes sense. So it's a pretty comprehensive solution for anyone needing a robust and reliable IMAP migration tool. The fact that it's been around since 2001 speaks volumes about its stability and effectiveness.
Absolutely. And the sheer volume of mailboxes it's handled, millions upon millions, is a testament to its capabilities. It's a true workhorse in the email migration world. Plus, the documentation is quite extensive, covering everything from basic usage to advanced techniques and troubleshooting.
So for our listeners, if you're facing an email migration project, IMAP Sync is definitely worth checking out. The website is a bit old school, but the software itself is clearly a powerhouse.
Exactly. Thanks for joining us on Tech Bytes and News. We hope you found this discussion informative. Until next time, goodbye.
Bye-bye.
Welcome to Tech Bytes and News, your daily roundup of articles featured in Hacker News. Today, we're diving deep into optimizing your Vim workflow, specifically focusing on a series of articles detailing practical automation techniques. It's all about making Vim your personalized, highly efficient workplace.
Sounds exciting. I'm a big Vim fan, but always looking for ways to boost my productivity. What are some of the key automation strategies discussed?
Absolutely. The author, Sharat, emphasizes identifying repetitive tasks that take more than a few seconds. He then focuses on creating custom mappings and commands to streamline these actions. For example, he remapped Control-Alt to switch to normal mode, a seemingly small change, but one that significantly reduces the time spent switching modes throughout the day. It's all about those micro-optimizations that add up.
Interesting. So it's not about learning new plugins, but optimizing your existing workflow? That's a different approach.
Precisely. He argues that adapting Vim to your style is more efficient than learning a plugin's workflow. He provides numerous examples, like automating the saving of all buffers with error handling, or creating directories before saving files. These are all common tasks, but he's automated them to eliminate friction.
I see. He also mentions using terminal for Git commands, right? I often find myself switching to a separate terminal for that.
Yes. He initially used the Fugitive plugin, but found it slow on Windows. So he created a custom mapping to open a terminal window with a pre-filled Git command, like git status or git diff, clever, and avoids the overhead of a full plugin.
That's smart. But what about the potential conflicts? He mentions a conflict with the line completion mapping when using Control-Alt for normal mode.
That's a valid point. He acknowledges that his control mapping interferes with Control-X, Control-Fl for line completion. However, he finds the trade-off worthwhile given the frequency of switching modes. It highlights the iterative nature of optimization, finding what works best for your workflow.
I like that iterative approach. It's not about finding the perfect solution, but one that works well enough. He also has some interesting mappings for sorting and reversing lines over motions, right?
Exactly. He created custom functions and mappings for sorting and reversing lines within a visual selection or over a motion like a paragraph or code block. This allows for very granular control and efficiency when editing.
This is really insightful. It's not just about the specific Vim commands, but the methodology of identifying and automating repetitive tasks. It's a valuable lesson for any programmer, regardless of their editor.
Absolutely. The article encourages a mindset of continuous improvement and optimization. It's about understanding your own workflow and tailoring your tools to it. And remember, this is just the first part of a 3-part series, so there's more to come.
I'm definitely checking out the rest of the series. Thanks for highlighting this. This is a great example of practical, effective automation.
You're welcome. And that's all the time we have for today's Tech Bytes and News. Remember to subscribe to our feed for more insightful discussions on the latest tech trends. Goodbye, and happy coding.
Bye-bye.
Welcome to Tech Bytes and News, your daily roundup of articles featured in Hacker News. Today, we're diving deep into the fascinating world of open-source FPGA retro emulation with the GameBub handheld. It's a seriously impressive project.
I'm buzzing with excitement. An FPGA-based handheld? That's next-level stuff. What makes GameBub so special?
Well, it's not just emulation. It's about pushing the boundaries. It plays Game Boy, Game Boy Color, and Game Boy Advance games, both from physical cartridges and ROMs from a micro SD card. And get this, it supports the GameLink cable for multiplayer action.
Wow, physical cartridges? That's a huge differentiator. Most FPGA retro projects focus solely on ROMs, right?
Exactly. That's a key innovation. The creator really went all out. It's a custom 6-layer PCB with a Xilinx XC7A100 TFPGA, integrated memory, display, speakers, rechargeable battery. The works! All housed in a 3D- printed enclosure. It's a complete package.
A 6-layer PCB? That's serious hardware design. What about the challenges? I mean, integrating all those components into a handheld must have been a nightmare.
Oh, it was definitely a journey. The creator initially planned to use an RP2040 and an ESP32, but ended up simplifying to a single 32 Spanish pesetas-S3 for more GPIOs and easier Rust firmware development. A smart move, I think.
I see. Interesting. And the display? Did they use a standard screen?
Nope. A custom choice there too. An ERT-FTO35 IPS6 LCD with a 320 by 480 resolution. This allows for integer scaling for GBA, but it's oriented in portrait mode, which led to some interesting challenges with triple buffering to avoid tearing.
Triple buffering on a handheld? That's impressive, but also sounds complex. What about power management? That's always a big hurdle in portable devices.
Absolutely. They used a TIBQ 2407X battery charger IC and a Max 17048 fuel gauge for safe and efficient charging and battery level monitoring. They even implemented a graceful shutdown using a push-button power switch. Very thoughtful design.
That's meticulous. And the audio? How did they handle that?
Clever use of the TLV320DAC3101, combining a stereo DAC, speaker amplifier, headphone driver, and digital volume control, all in one chip. A great example of smart component selection, simplifying the design. They even used 2 speakers for stereo sound.
Amazing! So the FPGA handles the core emulation, and the MCU manages the UI and peripherals? That's a classic and efficient approach.
Precisely. The creator even wrote custom emulator cores, not just porting existing ones. They used Chisel for the FPGA code, which made it easier to manage the complexity, a testament to their dedication.
I'm curious about the software side. What language did they use for the MCU firmware?
Initially MicroPython for testing, but the final firmware is written in Rust using the especially -IDF and Slint UI framework. They even added USB mass storage device functionality for easy ROM transfer. Quite a feat.
That's a really robust software stack. Did they encounter any major setbacks during development?
Oh yes. There were power domain issues with the DAC initially, requiring some PCB trace cutting and reworking. And getting the GBA cartridge support working perfectly was a long and challenging process, involving extensive logic analyzer debugging and a deep dive into cartridge timing, a true testament to their perseverance.
It sounds like a wild ride. What about the enclosure? Was that 3D printed?
Yes, initially with FreeCAD and SLA resin printing. But the second revision used Fusion 360 and even included custom LCD cover glass. They even created a dock with USB-C video output and Bluetooth controller support using a Raspberry Pi Pico W. The attention to detail is incredible.
This is truly a remarkable project. The level of detail and the sheer amount of work involved is astounding. It's a great example of what's possible with open-source hardware and software. What are the next steps for the creator?
They plan to finish the dock, improve emulator accuracy, add more UI features, and explore adding support for the Game Boy Advance wireless adapter over Wi-Fi. There are also plans for expansion boards for things like IR communication and a solar sensor. The possibilities are endless.
This is inspiring. Thanks for sharing this amazing story with us. It's a true testament to the power of open-source collaboration and individual ingenuity.
My pleasure. And thank you for listening to Tech Bytes and News. We hope you enjoyed this deep dive into the GameBub project. Have a great day, and we'll catch you next time.
Bye-bye.
Welcome to Tech Bytes and News, your daily roundup of articles featured in Hacker News. Today we're diving into PyG Assistant, an open-source PostgreSQL performance optimization tool. It's got some really cool features, and I'm excited to share them.
Excellent. I've been looking for something to streamline my PostgreSQL workflow. What's the core functionality of PyG Assistant?
At its heart, PyG Assistant helps developers understand and optimize their PostgreSQL databases. Think of it as a comprehensive toolkit. It analyzes database behavior, pinpoints schema issues, and even helps you manage a library of custom SQL queries.
That sounds incredibly useful. How does it handle schema optimization, specifically?
It identifies and helps you correct problems within your database schema. It's not just about identifying issues, it guides you through the process of fixing them. Think of it as a smart, helpful assistant, not just a reporting tool.
I see. And this query library management, is that just for storing queries, or does it offer more?
Oh, it's much more than just storage. You manage your queries via a simple JSON file, categorizing and documenting them. This makes it super easy to find and reuse queries, improving consistency, and reducing repetitive work. It's a game changer for maintaining a project's SQL codebase.
That's brilliant. So it's not just about performance, it's about developer workflow efficiency too. What about the user interface? Is it user-friendly?
Absolutely. It's designed to be intuitive and easy to use, even for developers who aren't PostgreSQL experts. The interface is clean and straightforward, making navigation and task completion a breeze. They used Volt Bootstrap 5 for the UI, which is a testament to their commitment to a good user experience.
Impressive. You mentioned it lints SQL code. What linter does it use?
It uses SQL Fluff, a popular and powerful SQL linter. This helps maintain code quality and consistency, catching potential errors before they become bigger problems. It's a great addition to the overall workflow.
And the LLM integration? How does that work?
That's a really exciting part. It supports OpenAI and even local LLMs like Llama. It helps you understand query plans and optimize your SQL, leveraging the power of AI to improve performance. It even helps you formulate prompts for other LLMs if you're not using OpenAI or Llama.
That's cutting edge. So it's not just a database tool, it's a platform for integrating AI into database optimization. What about deployment? How easy is it to get started?
Super easy. You can use Docker, which simplifies the setup process significantly. There's a Docker Compose file provided, making it a snap to get up and running. Or, if you prefer a manual build, the instructions are clear and straightforward. It supports both Unix and macOS.
This sounds fantastic. One question though. The documentation mentions both MIT and an unknown license. Could you clarify that?
That's a good point. I'll have to look into that. It seems there might be a discrepancy in the license files. We should definitely investigate that further. It's important to have clear licensing information.
Absolutely. Clear licensing is crucial for open source projects. Overall, though, PyG Assistant seems like a powerful and well-designed tool. Thanks for highlighting it.
My pleasure. It's a truly impressive project, and I'm excited to see how it evolves. And that's all the time we have for today's Tech Bytes and News. Thanks for listening, and we'll catch you next time. Goodbye.
Bye-bye.
Welcome to Tech Bytes and News, your daily roundup of articles featured in Hacker News. Today we're diving into a fascinating article from Digital Seams. What happens to your online accounts when you die? It's a surprisingly poignant look at digital legacy, isn't it?
Absolutely. It's a topic that's becoming increasingly relevant as more and more of our lives are lived online. The author starts with a personal anecdote, the death of a colleague, George. That really sets the tone, doesn't it?
Yeah, it's incredibly impactful. The contrast between George's smiling LinkedIn profile and the reality of his passing is jarring. It highlights the strange permanence of our online presence, even after we're gone. The author's experience with memorializing George's LinkedIn account is also telling, a bureaucratic process, even in grief.
Exactly. And that leads perfectly into the discussion of user-generated content. The author points out that this data persists long after the creator is gone, creating a kind of digital wake. It's a powerful image.
It is. And the permanence isn't absolute. The author rightly points out that data isn't forever. Service providers can, and do, delete data. It's a temporary immortality, at best.
That's a crucial point. It's not just about the data itself, but also the platform's control over it. The article then delves into the legal aspects, mentioning RUFIDAA, the Revised Uniform Fiduciary Access to Digital Assets Act. That's a mouthful, but it's important.
Absolutely. RUFADAA provides a framework for how fiduciaries can access digital assets after someone's death. It distinguishes between electronic communications, where content is private by default, and digital property, which fiduciaries can generally access. It's a nuanced legal landscape.
I see. It's interesting how it balances privacy concerns with the need for access to important information. But the article also highlights the practical challenges. Even with RUFADAA, getting access can be difficult, especially with end-to-end encrypted services.
Right. The author suggests proactive measures like using first-party management tools or leaving behind a password manager. It's all about planning ahead, and the article ends on a reflective note, comparing our online accounts to small stones piled on another, building a digital legacy.
A beautiful and haunting image. It really emphasizes the lasting impact we have online, even after we're gone. It makes you think about your own digital footprint, doesn't it?
It certainly does. It's a powerful reminder to consider our digital legacy and plan accordingly. Thanks for joining us on Tech Bytes and News. We hope you found this discussion insightful. Have a great day.
Bye-bye.
Welcome to Tech Bytes and News, your daily roundup of articles featured in Hacker News. Today, we're diving into a fascinating invention from the world of industrial design, a drill bit that also drives screws. It's a game changer. Or is it?
A drill bit that also drives screws? That sounds almost too good to be true. What's the catch?
Well, the inventor, German and Chic, claims it cuts your work time in half by eliminating the need to switch tools. It's a simple, elegant solution, really. Currently, it's only available in a 3/16 inch, 5 mm diameter, with Phillips or Posey tips, and it costs $19.50.
$19.50 for a single bit? That's a pretty hefty price tag for something that seems so niche. I'm curious, what are people saying about it online?
The comments are mixed, to say the least. Some people are skeptical. One commenter pointed out how much force the inventor seems to be using in a demonstration video, suggesting it might not be as efficient as claimed. Another questioned its practicality when dealing with stripped screw heads.
Yeah, I see that. Stripped screw heads are a real problem. And what about different screw types? Does it work with Robertson or Torx screws?
That's another valid point raised in the comments. Currently, it only supports Phillips and Posey, limiting its versatility. One commenter even suggested using a more versatile tool like the Zack Rabbit instead.
Right, the Zack Rabbit is a much more established and versatile option. So it seems like this drill bit might be a solution looking for a problem, as another commenter put it. It's a neat idea, but maybe not practical for everyone.
Exactly. Another commenter highlighted the efficiency of using a dedicated impact driver, which is often sold as a pair with a drill/driver. They argue that the speed and power of an impact driver outweigh the time spent switching tools.
That's a really good point. The impact driver is designed specifically for driving screws, making it significantly faster and more efficient. So while this drill bit is innovative, it might not be the revolutionary tool some people are hoping for.
Precisely. It's a clever concept, but its limited compatibility and price point might hinder its widespread adoption. It's a good example of how a seemingly simple innovation needs to address practical limitations to truly succeed.
Absolutely. It's a reminder that even the most innovative ideas need to be thoroughly tested and considered within the context of existing solutions. Thanks for breaking this down for us.
My pleasure. And that's all the time we have for today's Tech Bites and News. Thanks for listening, and we'll catch you next time. Goodbye.
Bye-bye. Thank you for listening to the daily roundup of Tech Bytes and News. See you again tomorrow. Goodbye.